Thanks, Kuldev. And it's not a secret that I'll do almost anything to get a chance to come back to San Francisco. We had a great time here in house staff, and then had 5 years of working at Alphabet. That was a tremendous time. And I will admit, I still have my golf membership at Lake Merced. I got in a great round yesterday. It was perfect weather to get out there. So just a couple of quick messages, and I hope we'll actually have time for a little Q&A. That's my favorite part of this kind of thing. You all have said it ever so gently, like I'm retiring. No, an election happened, and there's a change of FDA commissioner coming. So on the 20th at noon, I will be freed up as a free man again, able to say exactly what I think. A point of this meeting, and I think something that's really important and still a very difficult concept for a lot of people to grasp, is the critical importance of an ecosystem that assures that the products that Americans get are safe and effective, to the extent safe and effective is defined by law. And a lot of people say the FDA ensures that. In fact, it's in the statute. The word ensure appears over and over in FDA statements. But really, almost across the board, the first line of defense for medical products are the industries that make the products and the rules and guidances that they're supposed to abide by. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what Janet says about food, because it's probably the best example where the whole system is built on 10 foundational rules that farms and distribution centers and stores are expected to live by. Imagine if the FDA was in all of 1 million facilities it's supposed to be regulating every day. It's just not possible. And so it's critical that we work with each other and collaborate at the right times, but also that because there is a need for enforcement of regulations and dealing with things that go wrong or people who do bad things. At the same time, being able to separate the FDA from the herd in terms of being independent in its regulatory actions. And this is just a critical issue at the core of so many of the current arguments and disputes that are going on. Of course, in my current job, I think we've got it about right now in that regard. There are other things I don't think are right, and I'll say a word about those. But this balance where we work together on pre-competitive and many other issues that are critical to the well-being and the product manufacturing and distribution system. I'll also mention, I'm not going to write a book, but it's pretty well known around the FDA that I will be having a blog, something like a Substack. It's already got 90 chapters, so stay tuned. It covers a lot of issues that I think people need to know about which I have opinions. And I'll just say this ahead of time, a lot of my opinions are likely to be wrong, but I think airing them out, I hope will be useful to people. So very quickly, just to go through a few items. First of all, I think the blocking and tackling at FDA is sound and intact and working pretty well. We hear about the few controversial things, but the 98% of things that just happened because the product was good or the inspection was okay. The advisory committee was in agreement with the FDA view. Those things don't get talked about much. It's the few that where there's disagreement that cause all of the commotion that sometimes lead people to erroneous conclusions about how the overall system is working. Second point, we've made major changes in the structure of the FDA. And here, I'll give Janet a lot of credit. She took it on. I think she had some long-term issues that she hoped to deal with before she left. And at least she started dealing with them and set the pace. It's going to be years to get all of this right, but it started. And most notable here is the reorganization of the Human Foods program. When I came back in 2022, the day I came back, Janet presented me with the president of the Abbott recall of infant formula. It's a great welcome back to the FDA that she gave me. But it was so obvious to me right on day one that we had great people working on the human foods program, but the structure was set up in a way that made it impossible for people to come to the right decisions. In the midst of that crisis, I give the employees of FDA a lot of credit and Janet for leadership in getting external opinions from all over and putting the thing back together. I'm really happy that Jim Jones, the leader of that program, will be here. I think he's doing a great job. What's getting less attention, and I think in the long run is likely to be just as important, is the restructuring and reorganization of the former ORA, now called the Office of Inspections and Investigations. The workforce there is now fully focused on exactly what it's supposed to be doing. There were budget issues that need to be sorted out. Now that they're sorted out, I will be saying a lot in my post-commissioner life about the shortfalls in the budget for the job that people are expecting this group of people to do. And I can also assure you, one thing I'm really looking forward to is January 20th, I will be freed up from federal travel regulations. Middle seat in the back is just not a great way to go coast to coast. But imagine that you're an FDA investigator. These are people that do the inspections, and you're flying 8 hours to get somewhere. Your colleagues who are doing audits for the industry are flying business class. You're in the back. You're staying at hotels that they would never stay at. And then people are saying, why aren't you, attracting all great people to do these jobs? And in fact, the people who do these jobs are highly dedicated, as evidenced by the hard work they do. That you'll see a lot of focus there. There's going to be a discussion about AI. We're just writing something that'll come out before the 20th about the possibilities of AI as it relates to the inspectorate and what could be done. The Rare Disease Innovation Hub, a major step up now between Cedar and Seaber, the great chasm across the centers at the FDA. I will also be writing about that. It's an interesting cultural phenomenon. But this has already made a difference in giving people with rare disease and their families great hope that things will be accelerated and consistent across the FDA. Very much less talked about is a lot of work at the Center for Veterinary Medicine. I think it's the least appreciated part of the FDA that does a huge amount of work, essentially all animal drugs and devices, animal food, very important part. And there's been a reinvigoration of the science of that component, including alliances sort of like the CERSI, but at a lower level with veterinary schools. We have tremendous veterinary schools in the US. They had not really been involved with the FDA. We're now regulating cosmetics. That didn't exist. It took 20 years to make that happen. People don't realize that this $60 billion industry has a lot of products that can cause human good, if you like to look better, but also human harm with some of the products as they exist. CDRH has new leadership with Michelle Tarver. You'll see her today. And I think is doing a great job of staying on top of things. I noticed Doug Kelly here. This is a place where collaboration with the industry in the pre-competitive space is so critical because devices change so rapidly. And I think there's great work there. And then last but not least to mention is tobacco. When I came back, Janet was in the midst of trying to deal with 27 million applications for vaping products, which seemed like an insurmountable hurdle, was still not completely there. But I'd urge you to stay tuned. There is an enormous proposed rule, not a final rule, about the level of nicotine that should be allowable in tobacco products. So imagine a world, and this is all public, it's in the notice of proposed rulemaking. Imagine a world in which you couldn't get addicted by using combustible tobacco products. How many people do you think would still be interested in doing this? And it is going to really have a big impact, I think, at least in our discussion, when people see the economic and health consequences if this actually happens. All right. Two more things. Cross-cutting issues are important, and I've got a list of about 40 of them, but I'm just going to name 5. Gene editing, evidence generation in the post-market space, dealing with effective communication, I actually do believe that disinformation, misinformation is still a useful nomenclature, but I think the big deal right now, and if you read the Washington Post today, you'll see an interview with California's own Javier Becerra, the Secretary of HHS, where the focus is really on the fact that we're losing the battle right now to get valid, accurate scientific information to the public relative to the avalanche of opinions that are out there from people who have little to no expertise. AI, that's the next session. Supply chains. I didn't realize I was going to become a supply chain expert when I came back. I have a lot to say about this. I think FDA is doing a great job of dealing with problems, but the solution to supply chain is not fundamentally an FDA issue. We just have to deal with the consequences of it. It's a part of our marketplace that's out of control. I have two great experienced deans here. I could tell by the shortness of their talks. They know what to do. But in your roles at major U.S. institutions, the control of the supply chains for medical products are in the hands of our health systems. In other industries, you don't let contracts to people who can't deliver the goods, and you pay what it takes to have a quality product. That is not happening in the United States. Our shortage are almost all a result of contracts that often pay below the cost of producing the goods. What kind of institutions are doing that kind of thing? Maybe we'll have a discussion about that later. And then finally, four struggles, which I think will be discussed because they're going to be at the front burner as things go forward. If you look at the controversial things about FDA in general, so many of them are related to this fundamental issue we have in the United States of where does an individual's freedom do harm to him or herself and potentially other people around them versus the collective good that we have. So if you look at what's going to be the discussion about tobacco and about vaping, you look at what we call gas station products. Go to any 7-Eleven or gas station in rural America, you'll see a whole array of products which are not really legal, but they're not really enforced as illegal. Prohibition is unlikely to work. There are opinions all over the place about what should happen, and it's a difficult issue. Food, and Janet's going to clarify everything that needs to be known about food. I think it's right that it's getting a lot of attention now. It's so obvious to me after working on this that what we've done in America, uniquely, I think, compared to any other country, is make it so that far and away the easiest thing to do is to eat food which is bad for you. We just make it so easy to do it that people can't afford to spend the energy and money to get healthy food. Vaccination is going to be red hot. I probably don't need to tell you that. I have a screed coming out in JAMA this week, and it's going to be linked to a much longer Voices piece on the FDA website. I would really urge those of you interested in this to read it. It's just my opinion, it's not policy, but I think it's really important that we come to grips with this because we're on the verge of having outbreaks of really significant infectious diseases that we thought we were rid of. And we're seeing this upsurge right now in the respiratory viruses again, and there are going to be hundreds to thousands of Americans who will die unnecessarily because they didn't get vaccines that were available. And then lastly, I can't resist mentioning something that's bothered me forever, dietary supplements. The regulatory regime for dietary supplements is pathetic, but it's there by law, and it will only change if the law changes. To me, a dietary supplement is like a drug. It's something you offer to someone for a health benefit, or maybe there's a health risk, or maybe it has no effect and you just like to spend the money to make certain people wealthier. The only way to know that is to do research, clinical trials that show what the benefits and risks are. That's not being done. And so this is a $160 billion industry globally now. And people, I think, are very confused about these so-called structure function claims. Maybe Janet can take a minute when she talks about food to explain what that is. I still can't figure out why that was ever allowed, but it has been. It's basically a way of saying it does this or that, but it tells you nothing about whether it improves your health or makes it worse. So I think I used up all my time. So I'm always happy to take questions.
I was wondering where things stand with advisory committees. I know that, we've heard mixed messages from the FDA. For a while, it looked like you were headed towards the no vote advisory committee outcome, or at least not having to vote. And still, I think there is a possibility of saying you don't want to vote. Where do things stand right now?
If you're just asking about voting, it's up to the group that's asking the advisory committee for advice, and there are different opinions, but I think it's now fully aired out that, and it's just a fact that for the most part, people that work inside FDA want to know why people are thinking what they're thinking. And I still believe that asking a bunch of people under sunshine laws to show up in one day and read a thick booklet when they don't have access to other information that the review groups have after years of working on a product, asking them whether a product should be approved or not, I think, I don't think it's a great thing. But the case has been made, I think Rick Pastor probably most eloquently, that it does give a moment of clarification. I just worry still that it leads to too much spectator sport of winners and losers as opposed to just giving the FDA the information that it needs to make a decision, which after all is purely an FDA decision. It's not an advisory committee decision. And still, in the last 2 months when I've been at academic centers, the vast majority of people think the advisory committees make the decisions. We still have to keep working on changing that mentality because it's not the case.
We have a
Should we
question.
give them these things? We'll repeat it. Oh, there.
I'm just going to bend it. Vertically challenged, not disabled. Hi, I'm Rashmi. I'm representing RQ Ventures in my nonprofit here today. I had a question for Robert. Robert, thank you for your candor, read your blog, and we'll continue to read it. My question is, you told us top of mind issues for you, struggles with the FDA. Can you give us 3 things to prepare post January 20th? And I'm asking this as a woman, as a perimenopausal woman, as a mother. So I'd love for your top 3. Be prepared to do this or prepare yourself by doing this.
Well, I, number one on my list is actually this. I'm going to tie it to what's happening right now in Los Angeles. I think one of this individual versus collective good also plays out in all sorts of public health ways. Like, do we get prepared for fires and earthquakes and tornadoes, or do we just continue to pour more money into trying to come to the rescue after they happen? And I think it's going to be important in this next 4 years because I don't think there's going to be a lot of preparation going on. That individuals and families do their best to prepare themselves for things that are going to happen that you can't control, but you need to be able to sustain your own well-being and the well-being of your family. And I would extend that to communities. The second thing I would say for people that are scientifically involved is to focus relentlessly on the science and the differentiation of things that are proven from things that are just opinion. And I would say as part of that, join up a growing number of consortia that are going to try to help make that happen. It doesn't mean obviously there's one answer. And in fact, the reason to differentiate those is when it's opinion, there should be a lot of room for differences and discussion to occur. And then third, this may sound a little controversial, but I've said it before. The adage that RFK said about pack your bags and preserve your records. Preserve your records. I think it's really important because when Humpty Dumpty falls, someone's going to have to put Humpty Dumpty together again. And I would just say, I don't know that, I could be wrong. It may turn out it's going to be a great time, that all the change is going to lead to beneficial things for a lot of people. And we need to reserve that possibility. But I'd say one thing I've learned is as things cycle, it comes back around. So there will be another opportunity on some of these issues.
You will take one more question. Hi, this is Helen Huynh from Critical Path Institute. You started out talking about collaborations, and we are approaching the season of user fee renegotiation. So what, or if anything, you can talk about or mention about user fee and collaborations?
I really can't say anything about it except that, discussions have started and there's a lot of mutual interest in an ecosystem that produces high quality products. The other comment I'll make in general about user fees, and I've said this consistently, I still believe it. As a person, I would rather that all of FDA's funding come from from the public, from a taxpayer. But given that their user fees, a real benefit of user fees is that system has a lot of accountability in terms of how the money is spent and how people spend their time. And that's a model, I think, for other parts of government to look at. All
Okay,
right,
let's
thanks.
give Rob a big hand.